Are you concerned about those, the Nebraska versus Arkansas, Nebraska versus Oklahoma? It's great for fans, but is it great for Matt Rhule and the Huskers?
Coach Meyer, I'm at a lucky point in my life where at my fourth job and after getting fired in the NFL, I kind of say what I feel nowadays. I could care less. Why in the world would a Big Ten team who's already playing 9 conference games, why would you ever play one of those games?
Light it.
There's the music, Coach. It just doesn't hit the same without Mark Ingram.
Oh, how's he do it like this? Whatever. Yeah.
Mark.
Not happening.
Nope, that's all right. We leave it to the skilled talent over there. Welcome to the Triple Option presented by Wendy's. Go to Wendy's and taste the difference in a hamburger. Rob Stone, Urban Meyer with you this week. Our friend Mark Ingram will be back next week. This week on the Triple Option, we're going to talk Heisman betting favorites, all things Nebraska football. Their head coach, Matt Rhule, will join us. And does the spring game still have a place in the college football calendar? Please rate, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you get your podcast, as well as across social media at 3X Option Show. Again, new episodes coming your way every Wednesday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. So we crowned Ohio State as our 2024-25 football national champions after the first year ever of this 12-team college football playoff. So what's next on the college football calendar? Spring football. Right now, a lot of programs are in it, and a lot of them end with the spring game. Those games, they actually start, Coach, March 1st. Liberty has a game March 1st,
Wow.
Runs all the way to May 2nd. Washington has their spring game. Coaches, certainly fans, love spring football. I know the coaching staff loves it because so much happens in it. So tell us, from a coaching perspective, what purpose does spring football and maybe that spring game at the end serve the program?
Well, it depends on your team. If you're taking over Bowling Green, it's scrimmage every day. There weren't the rules that it was back then that there are now. But if you're taking over a program that's, like the Ohio State last year and the Wolverines the year before, where you're a veteran team, man, you're not hitting much at all. I used to have a 2,000 club and a 1,000 club, and a 1,000 club that means you have 1,000 competitive reps. You're basically a starter for a year. When you're a starter for a year, we start pulling you back early in spring practice. If you're a 2,000 rep club, that means you're a 2-year, legitimate 2-year starter that plays a lot of reps. You're not getting hit in the spring. I used to have a list of them because I want the other players to see that too. There used to be just kind of back guys off, but I want players to be rewarded. You're a 2-year starter. The last thing you need is spring practice. You need to just get stronger, faster, get that body in shape, unless there's a certain skill set that you need to work on. For example, I'm an outside linebacker, I'm moving an inside linebacker. Then you need to get reps. I'm an outside receiver, moving inside receiver. Then you got to get reps. If you're playing the same position, those guys didn't get many reps, and I promise you they didn't get hit. So it depends on the team, depends on the player. And then I'm finding out after my visit to Oregon last year for spring practice, it really depends on this NIL and the transfer thing is real, and spring practice is impacted by it. For example, Oregon last year, Dan Lanning, I was asking about, say, where's your first string? Why is the offensive line not together? And he made a comment, or his assistant did, that we don't put them all together because, first of all, we want to give everybody an opportunity. Second of all, if you start naming a kid a first string or second string or third string, that third string might leave. Leave during spring practice, which
during that practice
caught me off guard.
Yeah.
And then, you hear Matt Rhule, who's going to visit us here shortly. He's going to maybe not do the spring game because he's worried about showcasing players for other schools to come and try to get. Maybe not the starters, but some backup plays well. And I promise you, other schools, they have transfer portal staffs now. And you know what the transfer portal staffs do? They watch the lower level programs. They can go get a starter, or they can go watch like a Nebraska and see a backup. I need that receiver to come start for me. So it's really an amazing time of college football.
We're going to get to that Matt Rhule comment in just a second. I wanted to follow up on spring drills, and you're talking about the 1,000 snaps and the 2,000 snap guys. What about when you have a legit competition? And obviously the main competition typically is a quarterback competition. So if you have a quarterback competition, and you should always theoretically have some level of quarterback competition, I get it. But when that starter is gone and you've got 2, 3, 4 cats fighting to who's going to be number one in the fall. How do you manage that in the spring?
Well, we had a really famous one. We had Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins, and it was right. I mean, first of all, it's great because you got two great players. But I made sure our quarterback coach charted every play, every competitive snap was charted, because I knew both these players were probably going to be NFL players. Joe Burrow put in his time. He broke his hand the year before. Dwayne Haskins came in, became the backup. He went in the game we were losing to the Wolverines and won the game. So he was kind of the projected starter. But I wanted to make sure that everything was charted and it was very close. So that's a whole different animal, especially at that position, and especially as high profile. Plus, the player deserves that. You're going to make a decision on a player's career, you better have some data in front of them and make sure that that data has been worked over. And when you have a conversation with the families, it's not just, hey, I feel this guy should be the starter. Here's what we got. And it was, you go back to that time, and it was extremely close. And we named Dwayne right after spring practice because I didn't want to lose Joe, but we felt Joe should have that opportunity. And I'm going to LSU and being one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah, no kidding. So we talked about that unexpected wrinkle that Matt Rhule threw in there. Here's his comment that he had recently talking about why the Cornhuskers were debating what to do with the spring game due to everything that's gone on with NIL and the transfer portal.
I don't know that yet, but I'll be honest with you, I highly doubt it. And I think it's really fundamentally, I hate to say it like this, it's really because, last year we're one of the more televised. We were one of the more televised spring games, and I dealt with a lot of people offering our players a lot of opportunities after that. So to go out and bring in a bunch of new players and then showcase them for all the other schools to watch, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market. And so I don't necessarily want to open up to the outside world. I don't want these guys all being able to watch our guys and say, wow, he looks like a pretty good player. Let's go get him. But I don't know yet. I don't know anything. I thought it was important that we at least started to broach that subject of it not being televised. Yet at the same time, I do want to show off our players in some way. So, what exactly it'll be yet? I have not worried about anything other than recruiting right now. Both the portal and into the 26 class. So now I have to kind of turn my attention to all those things.
I applaud him, number one, for his honesty. And you're going to hear a lot more honesty coming up from Coach Rhule, who joins us in our next segment. We're going to talk about his plans or lack of plans or whatever his plans are for the spring game. But, Coach, first time you heard that comment that a high-level program was thinking of pulling their spring game, what jumped out to you?
Well, I'm used to it now. I would say a year ago I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? Who cares? That's not – but I get it. I think that of the things a head coach – that's why I think he's a successful head coach. He thinks outside the box. He's a visionary. He looks down the road. Sometimes as a head coach, you get caught on the moment. He's looking past the moment. And I get it. At first, like I said, 2 years ago or a year ago, I'd say, what are we talking about? But I think transfer portal, the reality that people have coaching staffs, assistants that are set. That's all they do is they watch other teams' players. And as they said, tampering does not exist. So that player has a good game. You know what happens the next day? An assistant coach from another school calls the high school coach, might call the player now because there are no rules, and say, hey, I got this amount of money for you, and you'll be a starter at this school. Or they'll contact a representative of that player. So I get it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Spring transfer portal, Coach, April 16th through the 25th will only reopen for players whose head coach leaves. This is kind of last chance for these players to transfer ahead of that 2025 season. Last spring, more than 1,200 players entered the portal. Per one source, we had over 2,700 players enter in December or after the playoffs, with only about 58% of those players currently committed to a new school and about 4% of the players removing their names and returning to their original school. And it brings up the point to you, hey man, there's a bunch of dudes that leave, and then there's this gap from guys who find new homes and guys who don't, and college careers can end. because you jump into the portal. It's not always a good thing. We always seem to hear the success stories, right, Coach? And man, there's a lot of other cautionary tales out there about the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think there's A and B, and I want to hit these both really hard. Number A, or letter A, is the fact that what happens to that 1,000 players that's 1,000 that have not found a home, and maybe it's more, maybe less, but maybe it's 4. Who cares? It's still someone that the minute you have that third uncle, which once again, a third uncle is a person that should not be in that meeting, but it's in the meeting, or you have an agent, or you have some advisor given advice. Put yourself in the portal. You know what the commitment of the school is? Once a player puts his name in the portal, the school does not have to honor that scholarship anymore. And he gets caught. He thinks the grass is greener. That offer does not come. The money does not come. You're left without the scholarship, or you got to go a much lower level than maybe you had anticipated, and you're starting over. For some people, that's good. For some people, it's not. And the second thing is, I read an article one time where a high school coach was very upset, and he actually banned the school from coming in to visit because that school really doesn't recruit high school players anymore. So they would come in, look at their players, but they don't really sign high school players. They just sign portal guys. And I get it. The high school coach was pissed off and said, why you come in, you're wasting my time, you're wasting our players' time, yet you don't scholarship, you don't go after high school players anymore. I'm sure there's going to be data. It's going to be hard to find maybe, but there's going to be a bunch of high school players left out there that otherwise might have been able to go to some of these schools.
Yeah. In the 2024 transfer cycle, Coach, over 3,300 players entered. 68% of those 3,300 committed to new schools, wow, with just over 3% returning to their original school. Fresh Moves of the Week brought to you by Wendy's. Go to Wendy's and taste the difference in a hamburger. So these numbers, you're right, we're kind of becoming comfortable listening to them, but they still make me uncomfortable. Coach, I don't know, what is the solution out there? Are there too many, transfer windows? Does there need to be a guarantee that these kids can fall back to their original commitment? What is the school's commitment to these players that they originally committed to? It's a wild world out there. What do you think would make the system a little bit better right now?
Man, what a tough question, and I think that's on everybody's mind across the game. We talk about, is there going to be a commissioner sometime? Will there be an umbrella of everybody under the same rules? I made my point very clear a couple weeks ago. No chance that's happening. The rich will get richer and the weak will get weaker. So I don't have an answer for that. That the air is out of that balloon. It will never get fixed. It almost makes me laugh when they say, let's get Congress involved. And I watch the news every night, so I'm not sure. They got their own issues. So I'm not sure the answer. I just don't like when players get hurt. Yes. And I'm not talking about the kid losing his opportunity to play. You know what? We're all grown men enough to say this. A small majority of those players have a chance to move on. Very small. And it's probably going to get smaller. I've always been the big proponent. Get your degree, get a job, utilize the network of the school you're at. We're going to visit with Matt Rhule. You tell me a football player that does it right, that lives a good life, gets good grades, he's probably set if he networks himself through the Cornhusker Nation. I know that's a fact at Ohio State. An Ohio State player goes through the process, is loyal to Ohio State, busts his butt, forget about the NFL. Someone's going to give him that opportunity at, outside of football. So that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I agree. They're still student athletes, and I know it's hard to hear that term sometimes and be like, really, you think this person over here with his third uncle is and trying to cash in this check and drive this car is a student athlete? They are student athletes, and there's way more student athletes than there are just athletes out there. And I want to see those young men, those young women still have. And
I know this for a fact. People are making decisions for $15,000.
Yeah.
They're making decisions, and they don't, the representative gets a cut of that, whatever it is, and here a guy wakes up somewhere where he doesn't want to be and just gave it away because someone advised him to move on. There's great stories, Dylan Gabriel, and there's some great stories out there. You got Will Howard won a national championship. Great story. That's very small.
Hey, I'm going to talk Will Howard coming up a little bit later on the triple option. But coming up next, we're joined by the head coach at Nebraska, Matt Rhule, here on the triple option presented by Wendy's.
Light it.
When it comes to making the best hamburgers around, the basics matter. And Wendy's, well, they've really got those burger basics on lock, and boy, does it show.
So what's the secret to all those hot and juicy hamburgers? Simple. Wendy's always crafts their hamburgers with that fresh, never frozen beef they're famous for. The result, hot and juicy beefy hamburger perfection every time.
No matter which hamburger you order from the Wendy's menu, you already know that thanks to those Wendy's burgers basics, it's going to be exactly what you were craving.
I mean, as long as what you crave is a hot and juicy hamburger, a hamburger made fresh just for you, not waiting for you. After all, the perfect burger doesn't spend its time waiting around.
So when you want a hot and juicy hamburger made fresh just for you, it's got to be Wendy's. Fresh is kind of their thing, you know. Fresh beef is available in the contiguous U.S., Alaska, and Canada, not available in Hawaii. Enjoy all your favorite sports like never before at BetMGM. Add a parlay wager. Minimum odds of plus 400 to your bet slip. Bet up to the specified max stake and activate your token. If you win and your bet with the token applied, you'll score extra winnings on your wager. And with BetMGM at your fingertips, every play and every game matter more than ever. Place your moneyline, prop, and parlay bets at the sportsbook born in Vegas today. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Subject to eligibility requirements, rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Welcome back to the triple option presented by Wendy's. Urban Meyer, Rob Stone, and a guy we've been trying to get on for a couple weeks now. Super excited to have Nebraska head coach Matt Rhule join us right now from his office. We always are curious about the things behind the coaches when we interview them. But as Urban said off camera, it wasn't so much the things behind you, Coach Rhule. It's the stuff that's happening up top here, this shade of gray that always seems to hit head coaches after a certain point. First thing Coach notices.
It's the lighting, he said. It's the lighting.
The lighting.
It's the light. Yeah.
It's the
You know what? It's this is like the part transfer portal, part NIL, part Big Ten being at 18 teams now. It's a little bit of everything.
Maybe a little spring game in there as well. We'll get to all that in a second, Coach.
Hey, Coach Rhule's great to hang with you, man, and much respect. You know, Tom Osborne is a dear friend, and I go back in my career, and I studied in Nebraska at a very young age. They were the first school, Rob, to invest in the student athlete, and I mean that sincerely. They in the strength training, and this is way back when, and so I've always been a huge fan of Nebraska. One year we went and played them. I had my manager get a golf cart. I put a hat and sunglasses on. I just asked him to drive around. I wanted to see this crowd. It's the best, as good a crowd as there is. And in the 90s, they were the mecca of college football. You joined the Big Ten, I think, in 2011, and they've had some good years, but not the great years. What obstacles have you seen since you've been there, and what promise is there that someday Nebraska can get back to the Nebraska of old?
I've kind of always likened it. I've kind of always tried to explain to people what I saw when I got here. Like, you sometimes you go into you go down south, you go up north, wherever, and you see like these beautiful old mansions, right? And beautiful pillars, just beautiful bones. But the paint's chipping, the windows are old, the landscaping's dead. And that's kind of what this felt like. It felt like, you have this amazing fan base. You have this history of excellence. You have a beautiful stadium, great facilities. Yet the things that really matter, dominance in recruiting, being on the forefront. And I think what you said, Coach, is really important. There was a day when everyone in the country came to Nebraska to see what Boyd Epley was doing, to see what Tom Osborne was doing, whether it was offense, defense, life skills, study hall, nutrition. My wife was a dietitian at Temple when I was an assistant coach for Al Golden there, and she put in the training table, and she didn't know how to put in a training table. She actually went to Nebraska and studied, hey, how do you put a training table in? And she went back and did like this little miniature version at Temple. So we were always on the forefront. And when I got here, it was like there was this real feeling of, well, we can't do anything new because this is how you do it at Nebraska. We've been, this is what won for us. And we were doing things in 2022, 2023 very similar to what we had done in 1995. And as I talked to Coach Osborne, it wasn't about recreating the past. It was getting back to that mindset of let's be on the forefront of technology, sports science, recruiting. Let's do things better than anyone else is doing them. And I think that shift was maybe a little uncomfortable for people. It sometimes feels like, hey, are we not being respectful to the past? But I'm blessed that Coach Osborne has really kind of paved the way for me and said to everybody, like, if Matt wants to flip sides of the stadium, let him flip sides of the stadium. If Matt wants to change the locker room, let him change the locker room. Like Coach Osborne did that. And so we're trying to be the best. I mean, if you came and saw our building, I think we probably have the best facility, the best training table. Like we are at the forefront again. And I think that'll hopefully help us attract players.
One thing that's always intrigued me about Nebraska is the recruiting piece. That back in the day, I think California and Texas were the big, the home state, as you will, because there's just not enough players in Nebraska. And then they went to the Big Ten, and I always wondered, like, where would you go reach as far as, it's more national recruiting now with the access, but where do you go? Where is your home recruiting base now that you're a Big Ten? Back in the Big 12 era, or Big 8 even, you had that quarter of teams along there, the Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, and you go get those players, great players. Where do you see that Nebraska fits as far as recruiting?
Yeah, we kind of refer to it as like the 500-mile radius, but for us, it's really Kansas City, St. Louis. You go back, the history of the players who came out of those places and came here and had success. So sort of reestablishing ourselves in those two cities and then the schools between, going up to Chicago, battling for guys in Chicago, and then it's Nebraska up through the Dakotas. During my time in the NFL, Caroline, I went out to North Dakota State and I went and watched Tristan Wirfs at Iowa. I did Northern Iowa. I just never went to Nebraska, and I was like, well, why are all the best linemen coming out of these FCS schools like the Dakotas, and they're not coming out of here? And so we take Montana, we take North Dakota, South Dakota really, really seriously, especially for big players. And so sort of that Dakota through Nebraska into, as I said, Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago. We've had some success in Denver, and then we're going to go to Texas, California, and Georgia, Florida. As you said, things have gotten so national. I think as you look at across all schools, you look at Ohio State, like the amount of Ohio guys maybe 20 years ago to now how much more national is. Look at Penn State, how many Penn State, Pennsylvania guys till now how national is. So we want to be relevant kind of in all the major metropolitan areas. So if we get them on the first crack, great. If they go into the portal, there's still a lot of relevance with us. And I think now with USC, UCLA, going to California makes a lot of sense. It's a quick flight to Nebraska. It's not too far. Your NIL goes a little further here than it does in California because of taxes. If you want to leave the state, it's a good place to come. And then you'll probably have a chance to go back and play a game in your home state because of the teams that are there.
One more question about recruiting, because I think this is intriguing. It's probably ever changing, but do you have a percentage of high school versus transfer? Back in the day, remember you save these 3-4 for junior college. Now I'm not even sure. I don't even hear about junior college, but do you have a percentage? You want to be 50-50? Do you want to be do you have a mindset of what that would be?
Yeah, Coach, it's changed so much for me. Like this year, the portal this year was unlike anything I'd ever been a part of. I'd been a part of the portal, previous 2 years. I'd been a part of free agency. This was like unlike anything. I mean, anything I'd ever seen. It was almost a little bit invigorating. In some ways, it was like I came in every day and I had a list of like 30 guys to watch. I just sat here and cranked it out like a scout, watching guys off PFF and trying to find guys that fit us and then getting to know them. So I actually kind of enjoyed that process, but I would still like to bring in 15 high school guys a year. I mean, I still would like to be, 65, 70% high school. it's just got to be the right guys. And I would say this, with the new 105 limit and the ability to probably scholarship more guys, while we're trying to find the 5-star day one starter walk in, I'm also always looking for the Temple guys. The guys that came in for me there that were big and fast and could run, that just needed to develop. They're like the new walk on. They're the guys that show up, and if they're willing to stay for 3 years, you might develop into a really good player. So we're thinking about recruiting, like high end recruiting, not necessarily walk on, but like trait players, like players that we think we can develop, and then go get the guys we need out of the portal.
Last year, you guys 7-6 overall after that bowl win, which reversed a sub 500 season in your first year. So there's something about year 3 under Matt Rhule in the college game. Obviously, you did it at Temple, you did it at Baylor, and here we are closing in on year number 3 for you at Nebraska. What is it about year number 3 with Coach Matt Rhule?
Well, I think it's just always been about the players. I've never really walked into a place that the roster was ready to win. We walked into Temple and we were going from the MAC into the Big East / American, right? I walked into Baylor and there was this huge scandal. Came here and, they just hadn't really won. And, so there were always good players at those places. But to me, it's always been about, we've taken young players. We've taken our lumps early with the young guys. And as that quarterback, it was PJ Walker at Temple. It was Charlie Brewer at Baylor. When they got to year 3, it was their team. We had a good defense and guys kind of knew what to expect. Here, Dylan's in year 2. We've had a good defense. We've had a top 20 defense the last 2 years. We just haven't scored any points. And so year 3, I think guys know what to expect. And when you're asking, when you're doing it the way we try to do it, and I've copied a lot of the stuff that I do. I've copied a lot of it from Coach Meyer. Like, I worked for Steve Adazio, who came obviously under coach's tutelage. I mean, everything from the plan to win to the off-season program to the different things I learned from Steve, from Coach. We tried to implement a lot of that, and it's hard. And so in year 2, a lot of times guys are like, "Man, why are we doing this?" It's we're not undefeated, and you got to kind of get to year 3. You got to get to the point where they're like, "Listen, it's not changing. We know how to work hard. We've had a bunch of close losses. Now it's time to go win." And I think we have the guys to do it. Certainly we have a quarterback. When you have a quarterback, you always have a chance. And so I just think it's always been like a process of teaching, molding, developing, and then when the time comes, man, go win.
You talked about your quarterback, Dylan Raiola, going into his second year as a starter. What's been the offseason focus for your staff in, getting him to that third-year level, if you will?
Yeah, I think, you play year 1 at quarterback. Sometimes, you play so much of it off of like just feel and adrenaline and, just trying to make plays. And then, you get to year 2 and you're really trying to master all the parts of the offense. I think for us, it's him doing that while at the same time becoming dominant in the little things. His weight, making sure that he's a guy that can extend plays, making sure that he's a guy who's nimble, and making sure that he's a guy who can run. He's a much different quarterback at 225 than he will be at 245. And so him buying into that, he comes in every morning and does cardio before he throws and lifts, right? So he understands that he's a big man and wants to keep his movement skills. I think it's him. When you're a freshman, last year he was trying to win the job. Now it's him every day with those receivers. Like, hey, here's what we're going to do today. Like, here's what we're working on outside of what the coaches want. Leading by example, but by also demanding that the guys come be there with him. And then, like anybody else, like any other young player, being good at the things you don't like. I'm the quarterback. I want to throw routes on air, but I know coach has mat drills and I'm going to go do the mat drills. Or I don't know what a prowler push race has to do with me as a quarterback, but I'm a competitor and I'm going to go do it. And being great at all those things that none of us really like. I think when you see your quarterback out there, he's going to be on the front cover of a magazine. He's going to, but when you see him grinding next to you, then you're kind of okay with all that. So I think Dylan's done a good job of embracing all those aspects of his game.
You got the hair on the back of my neck standing up on mat drills, man. So I'm going to go on record of the host. Ingram's not with us. Ingram could make it. Stoner went last. I'm saying 2.5 minutes. So a mat drill, I don't know if you can still do it like we did in the old days, because you're not allowed to have the combatives and all that. So mat drill's old school in Nebraska?
Yes. Yeah, we're old school. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I was saying earlier, Coach, I worked with Coach Adazio and, Fry and all those guys, Perano, all those guys came up from you. And so I had taken kind of all what you guys have done and then sort of some of the Penn State world. And so you're right. Some of the combatives you can't do, but there's ways you can do some things. I mean, it's crazy to me. Somewhere along the way, we've said that like two guys wrestling is bad or two guys fighting over a med ball is bad. Yet people pay so if you do it, I might lose my job, but people pay like $100 a month to go to a box and do CrossFit and do crazy things. And then the people that are saying it's bad to do this to kids are the ones listening to David Goggins say run 400 miles. Like doing hard things and doing tough things and challenging yourself is what our society and our children need now more than ever. And so like our coaches, they want to walk through and they want to do route trees and all that. I'm like, you can do that later. Like we're coming in twice a week and we are challenging our minds, our bodies. I'm challenging the coaches and, players like, what's this have to do with winning? And the famous Coach Paterno line was always, it has nothing to do with winning, but it has everything to do with winning. It's like, so yeah, I believe in it, and I'll never, ever, ever. They'll fire me before I quit doing it.
All right, I'm a bigger fan of. I was a huge fan of Nebraska.
Now you're all in, Coach.
Yeah, let's go.
So, Coach Rhule, my mom's listening back there in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. She has no idea what a mat drill is. All right, so tell Joy Stone tell her what a mat drill is. She's all right. She produces Division I athletes. She's all in.
So it's really two things, right? So it's the overall. It's like a series of stations where we're in sort of competitive, can't say combative anymore, but competitive things where we're pushing ourselves to the limit. And then for us, the true mat drill is, we're gonna line up 8 lines deep across a mat, and we're gonna do agility drills and movements and off of command. And if one guy messes up, we all go back, and you learn the power of accountability. You learn the power of like, I'm going to go hard, but if the guy next to me doesn't go hard, the guy behind me is just a little bit off, then we have to do it again. And I think it's really good. There was a day like when the players came to college and they wanted to see what their dorm room's like. Now most players come to college and they want to know if they don't have to have a roommate. We all just want to be so kind of separated and isolated now. And the world's changing, I get it, but there is something about a unit, and there is something about knowing who you can count on and who you can't count on. So it's a challenge, and I run the actual mat itself. I run the mat. Like that's my one thing I do in this program consistently, because I want to be able to watch the players and see who's embracing something that's hard and who's getting through it. Anyone can get through it, but who's attacking it. And if they can leave our program and they've learned to attack hard things, then I don't know, they're probably gonna have a better life.
Is there a mat drill? Is there a mat drill winner out there, Coach? Like a crown, a belt? Do you?
No, but what we do is after every we watch them, and after every day we after every practice in the different groups and the bigs common skills, they're either in a black shirt or red shirt, like they're tiered, so they know kind of exactly where they stand, right? So there's there's honest feedback based upon your performance.
I think the greatest thing you said is mat drills, Rob, is the accountability and discipline. Yes, the drills are really hard. At times they're miserable, but the fact when an older player is in that first line and they get through, and that freaking freshman or sophomore comes up and his foot's on the line, he's not in a football position, he twitches when he shouldn't twitch, and then they have to go back. You see some stuff now. A great leader is not going to put up with that very long. So this is your show, though, Matt Rhule. I love it, though. Hey, let's flip the switch here. So the spring game, you made an interesting comment. I went to visit Oregon last year. Dan Lanning had me speak to the team, and I loved it. And all of a sudden I looked around and I said, where's your offensive line? He said, well, we really don't have a first string, second string, third string in spring because guys might move on if they're not where they think they should be. Their agent or whatever tells them to move on. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I see the potential of Nebraska. Robin, Nebraska's spring game is like a game. I mean, it's like Ohio State. It's like one of the 4 or 5 programs in America. You have that kind of fan base. If you pull a spring game, I can imagine there's Husker Nation is going to be a little pissed off, but I get it. And the real reasoning is because of tampering. Is that what I kind of heard?
Yeah, I think there's really 2 things, right? I mean, I think, we're still going to do spring the way we've always done it. We're still going to be physical. We're still going to strike. We're still going to tackle in the scrimmages. But but in controlled settings. Last year we got in our game and one of our best receivers got hurt, and you lose a couple games in the last drive of the game, and you're like, man, I sure could use Demetrius out there. So, a game's always a little different. There's always a little more to it, but really, our game last year was televised. A ton of people watched it, and then on Monday there was, hey coach, I got a call from so and so. I got a call from so and so. So it just, when you think about the risk reward when we're paying players already, and then with the portal, the portal's kind of in spring, but some guys will have graduated. It just, I just don't know that I want to showcase for people what's out there. Plus, 2 new coordinators, like why let them see it? So we'll do something like the Pro Bowl. We'll go out there and we'll have 7-on-7 competitions. We'll probably bring back some former players. We'll do some skills challenge. We'll do all those things because I do want all the kids across the state of Nebraska who maybe can't get to a game to be able to come sit in Memorial Stadium and watch their players. And what I did love about the Pro Bowl is, you get to see the guys with their helmets off. You get to see their faces. You get to see their personality. So we'll do something. And we're not going to back away from physicality in general. But, I was watching those FCS playoffs. I was watching Montana State, and, guy makes a big block. I'm like, who's that? And they're like, well, he's going here and he's going here. I mean, it's just, you're showcasing your players. And so with no contracts, the day we get contracts and the day we get some rules, I'll back off. But, I saw it firsthand last year how much it put us at risk, and I'm not really willing to do that. I think we want to keep as many guys as we can for the fall.
Makes sense. It's the grim realities of what college football is these days. All right, Coach, give Husker Nation some parting words that should have them upbeat and excited about the 2025 campaign.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm going to start our team. I have a team meeting today. It's really the first one I've had before Matt drills, and I'm going to start it with. I don't know if you've seen there's a 3-part documentary on the Red Sox and the Yankees, and the comeback when the Red Sox were down 0-3 and they came back and won it, and they talk about Curt Schilling, and Curt Schilling talks about breaking the curse. And he's like, I came there because I wanted to play in that game. He goes, but it was really just a curse of talent. There's no such thing as a curse. You got to be good enough to win. And so, so much that happens here, people are like, are we snake bit, or why do we lose so many close games, or why we're just, you lose close games when you're just not quite good enough. You're able to hang in because you're tough. But I think between what we've done recruiting, I think the way the guys are working, I think we're gonna have a chance to compete in every game. And we went to Ohio State. I saw Coach Meyer was obviously out at the 50 celebrating with his national championship team. And we played Ohio State, and I think in that moment on that day, our guys felt like, well, we can play at this level. It's one thing to take over a program that's been winning and continue to try to get it to win and maybe take it up a notch. It's way harder to take over a program that hasn't won in 9 years and teach them how to win, because every step of the way, everyone's like, well, why are we doing this? And I think our guys see that we're close, and so it's nothing magical. It's not the uniforms we wear. It's nothing special that we're going to do. It's just getting better. It's getting our players better, and so that's kind of a Nebraska type approach, right? That's kind of like a farmer every single day, just going out and doing his job. And I think our team's finally kind of getting that, and so I expect us to compete.
Hey, one last question before I let you go. I'm just intrigued by this, and I made a comment a couple weeks ago that I'm really worried about the non-conference schedules, because it's the right thing for Ohio State to play Texas, but why? At the end of the day, Ryan Day's got to make the playoffs. Matt Rhule's got to make the playoffs. This playoff thing has become, I think it's great, but are you concerned about those, the Nebraska versus Arkansas, Nebraska versus Oklahoma, where it's great for fans, but is it great for Matt Rhule and the Huskers, or does it just get to the playoff?
Why would you ever play one of those games? We're being completely honest. Like, Coach Meyer, I'm at a lucky point in my life where at my 4th job, and after getting fired in the NFL, I kind of say what I feel nowadays. I could care less. Why in the world would a Big Ten team who's already playing 9 conference games, why would you ever play one of those games? Like, what? Like, you look at a lot of teams, like there's, and I love it's not anti-SEC, but like there's some SEC teams that last year only played 3 away games in another team's stadium. 3. We're in a league where some years you have 5 home Big Ten games. Some year you have 5 road. You have to go on the road 5 times in the Big Ten. with no like, Florida, Georgia, like, in a neutral site. So, they proved to us this year when they did all the seeding and all that stuff that early season wins didn't mean a thing. That really it was at the end of the day what you looked like in the last month of the season. That's what it all proved to us. Like,
I agree.
if you look at, and when I say what it looks like, it's really how good your offense is. If you're scoring points and blowing people out late in the year, you're going to make it into the playoffs. So, we beat Colorado. That was the same weekend, Coach, that Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. And so that was a huge win for us. That was a huge loss for them. They made the playoffs. Obviously, we did not. So I don't know why. I don't know what the incentive is, unless at some point the Big Ten, SEC get together and they say, "Hey, we're doing this, we're doing that." But when I joined the Big Ten, the thought of playing Oregon would have been like, "Wow, that'd be a great non-conference game." Well, now they're in the league. USC's coming here next year, going to UCLA. We've already added in those big games, and so I don't see much cause for it. I think Ryan's a great guy to go to play Texas again to start the year off. But I don't know what the point is in terms of if you're a Big Ten team getting to the playoff.
The fans appreciate it, right? The Ohio State fans, the Texas fans, the college football fans love those big games. And you've got some big games, as you mentioned, Coach, to close the season. You guys got a great opportunity to close strong at Penn State and then home to Iowa. And you've got two big Cornhusker fans cheering for you right now. Coach Matt Rhule, enjoy the rest of the spring drills. Get those kids on the mats immediately. Let's go. Coach and I are going to go wrestle on the mat over something. I don't know what.
2.5 minutes it would take. Coach Rhule, that's it. He'd tap out.
No way. Out. Give me 2:45. I'll go 2:45. Coach Matt Rhule of Nebraska, thanks so much for joining us on The Triple Option, presented by Wendy's.
Light it.
Welcome back to The Triple Option, presented by Wendy's. Urban Meyer, Rob Stone back here with you this week. Time for Pick 6, brought to you by BetMGM. Add a parlay wager, minimum odds of plus 400 to your bet slip. Bet up to the specified max stake and activate your token. If you win your bet with the token applied, you'll score extra winnings on your wager. Now, last week, Coach, we talked about the mighty Hartford Whalers and the NHL and everything that came with hockey right now. This week, Coach, we get back to college football, the top 6 front runners for next season's Heisman Trophy winner. Okay, we're talking Heisman next year. I'm going to give you the top 6 and their numbers in a moment, but number one, what's it like to go into a season coaching a player that is a Heisman candidate?
Well, we had it almost every year. It started back at Utah when I had Alex Smith. Did I know Alex was going to be a Heisman? Utah never really had I don't think they had one. And I'm sure they didn't. And Alex, as the season started to progress, I started hearing the word Heisman. Matter of fact, I'll go one before that. Josh Harris at Bowling Green, had such a year that people were starting to vote for him for the Heisman. So as a head coach, safety of players is number one, but also getting your best players the ball, I would always say, is number two. But then also making sure that the players get what they deserve, their value. Obviously you got making sure guys are ready for the NFL draft, but also if you have a guy that's in, what that does for your school, more importantly for that player, you got to make sure that he's getting his stats. For example, J.T. Barrett was a Heisman candidate, I believe, for 2 or 3 years. In one game, I knew we were playing a team that wasn't real good and we were going to beat them. He threw for 5 or 6 touchdowns in the first half because I told our coordinator, no runs. We're going to throw the ball every snap because I owe that to that player. I knew we were going to run the ball in the second half to kind of end the game. So I think coaches do a good job. Most coaches do a good job. You got a Heisman candidate. The first job, win the game. Second thing, make sure that player is in the running. And does that impact your play calling? When I had Tebow and when I had some of these other guys, yeah, it did. I wanted in my mind is saying, does he need, I would actually look at the stats on the scoreboard, say how many yards did he throw for, and make sure he's at least in the running for that thing.
Yeah. All right. So again, according to BetMGM, and these lines always change, right, Coach? Here are your early season front runners to win the Heisman. Arch Manning at Texas is plus 700. Quarterback run here. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU plus 850. Go to Clemson. Cade Klubnik sitting there at plus 1100. Finally, a non-quarterback, Buckeye wideout Jeremiah Smith at plus 1200. And then from there, we go back to the quarterbacks and back to the Big Ten. Drew Allar at plus 1,300. So here we are hanging out in the early parts of spring, and we're already talking Heisman. Yeah. Who's got the early edge right now? And again, by the way, this is a trophy that is won in November. But here we are talking about it in spring because people love talking about the Heisman Trophy, and so do we. Coach, who do you like?
Well, the best player in the country, maybe in the last decade, is Jeremiah Smith. He's the best player. I'm going to go through each one real quick. Arch Manning, to be determined. I said that, and I think some Texas fans got a little upset saying he's the next coming. He might be. He's really good. He's only thrown 90 passes, and he had 9 touchdowns, 2 picks. So the quiet guy that really Klubnik of Clemson, he had 36 touchdowns throwing last year, and he's back. And you've seen steady improvement from him as a quarterback. So if I had to say it's only plus 1,200, Arch Manning's number one at plus 700 as far as the betting. I'm going to say Jeremiah Smith's going to be the first receiver in a while to win the Heisman Trophy.
Wow. 4 wide receivers have won the Heisman, right? Tim Brown at Notre Dame, right. Desmond Howard at that program up north. Devontae Smith, and of course, Travis Hunter last season, although Travis, I think he won it not just because he was a wide receiver, but because he was just, an excellent defensive player as well. Just to go back to Arch at plus 700, as you mentioned, doesn't have the numbers, certainly has the name, has the pedigree. I go back to this statement that Heismans are won in November. Texas, obviously they open up the season in Columbus against the defending champs, Ohio State, but they close November with Georgia, and then they host Arkansas and Texas A&M. So those are 3 games you can win a Heisman with. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. The Tigers open up at the Tigers. Clemson in August against Cade Klubnik, and that might be Clemson's marquee game of the season. They don't have Miami on their schedule this year. They do host SMU and Florida State and close at South Carolina. Jeremiah Smith, 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. I think a lot of us think he's just the best player in college football. And it's interesting, Coach, because, Travis Hunter was the best player in college football last year, we all felt. And that conversation was able to maintain itself throughout the year. And Colorado had a good enough season, and the guy was doing enough spectacular plays on both sides of the ball that conversation was able to carry on. Jeremiah Smith was just shut out of a couple games because defenses just said, we can't let him beat us.
Right.
And again, the problem with the question with Smith is who's going to be his quarterback. Julian Sayin, Lincoln Kineholz, the freshman Tavian St. Clair, all in the competition right now. Sayin appears to be the leader right now. Spring will have a lot to say.
I will say this though, for everyone to understand though, as important as that quarterback is, that is number one. But who's the Emeka on the other side?
Yeah,
you can take away a good receiver. Good. You can't take away 2. When I had Lewis Murphy, Percy Harvin, when I had Terry McLaurin, Michael Thomas, you can't take away 2 because you can't rotate the coverage. So will Carnett Tate develop enough to be that, to take the heat off of Jeremiah? Because once again, you saw it. You can take away a good receiver.
Right.
You can't.
I think Tate will be good enough. Also, the question who takes over at running back as well for Ohio State,
Absolutely.
Right? They lost their 2-headed monster, and that obviously takes a lot of pressure off of quarterbacks and wide receivers. And of course, the last one, Drew Allar at Penn State, plus 1,300, threw for over 3,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, able to rush at those 6 scores, 302 rushing yards. And again, the story about Penn State, can they win the big one? They are bringing a lot of guys back, a la what Ohio State did last season, and that's going to be a big talking point through the course of the offseason and the early stages of college football in the fall. All right, make sure to follow, subscribe, rate us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as across social media. You can always find us at 3X Option Show. Our thanks again to our wonderful sponsors, Wendy's and BetMGM. Matt Rhule, thanks for joining us. Mark Ingram, we can't wait to have you back. Come back from Safari and join us. We'll see you again next week.